calling myself the tree-hugging lawyer. So tree laws pretty much does what it says in the tin. So we are a law firm specialising in anything to do with trees. Don't trees come in peace? And they come with love and they interact with one another via their roots underground. Are you experiencing this craziness as well?
Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of But Is It Legal? With me, Simon Marshall. I'm the host. As you know, I'm always your host, and I'm the founder of TBD Marketing. We're a marketing agency that's dedicated to working for law firms. And yeah, today we're really lucky. We've got the tree lawyer, Sarah Dodd, who is joining us. Sarah, can you introduce yourself? Tell us a bit about your career history and what you do today.
Yeah, hi everybody. Thanks for having me on, Simon. My name's Sarah. I am the owner and founder of Tree Law. So Tree Laws pretty much does what it says in the tin. So we are a law firm specialising in anything to do with trees. So whether that's a tree causing damage, a protected tree, or a planning dispute, for example. We even extend into crime and criminal cases involving trees. Tree Law launched on the 1st of November 21, so we are just into our 4th year of trading. Before that, I worked for national, large firms for just over 20 years, I think it was. So I decided I wanted to take the specialism that I had created working for large UK firms and actually really niche down into something and create a firm that put the environment at the heart of what we do.
I love that. Do you think that people like instinctively know what it is when they come across the tree law, or what it is that you do, or do you find yourself explaining yourself to them quite a lot of the time?
Yeah, I'd say no, they don't really know what I do, and that's why I started calling myself the tree-hugging lawyer. A bit of a cringy, cheesy expression, but I just found it was a really quick soundbite to give to somebody that gave them the ethos of me and the business really quickly, and then I could expand out from there. And I can almost like role play almost every single conversation that I have, which is I own Tree Law. We specialize in the law around trees, and then people say, "Oh, is that a thing? Oh, I think there isn't very much of that." And then a couple of moments later say, "Oh, but yes, I've been in a dispute with my local authority, or my neighbour's done this," and then everyone a couple of moments later recounts their own tree issue.
I was in the garden with my wife a couple of days ago, and she said, "I'm going to chop that blinking tree down." I said, "You're not going to do so until I've chatted to Sarah Dodd in the first place." So it was so funny, and that is who you are for me. I think you are one of those lawyers that's really nailed their kind of like that niche. And I love the fact that do you find that people flow towards you a bit easier? Do they come looking for you, given your tree law, tree hugging lawyer kind of monikers?
In my mind, I'm sort of retranslating that question and saying, where are your inbound leads generated from? I would say, mostly people are coming to me through recommendations from arborists and
Yeah,
local authorities. So I
right.
think the brand that I've built up in that sector is
Mm,
generating work to come through to me. At the moment,
amazing.
I would say that and sort of online presence and Google advertising is probably my biggest source of work coming through to me.
It's just a long way from where we were with generalists, I think, 4 years ago, where people were worried about marketing, over marketing in one area because they were fearing that they would end up niching too much. And I think you're, the opposite of that. You're like super focused on the thing that you do, and
Mm.
it's there in the name and it's there in the title. I love that element. Tell me a bit about do you love being a law firm founder? And give me, reasons why or why not.
Do you know what? Going into setting up a law firm, you can only do that in blissful ignorance, can't you? Think unless you're setting up your second firm or third firm, you can't go into that with your eyes wide open. Um, it is so, and you must experience this as business owner as well. It's so multifaceted, isn't it? I mean, it is brilliant in that you're totally free to do it as you want, to create a brand that you want, to market as you want. You're incredibly responsive, very agile, all of that. But then the downsides are that the buck stops with you about absolutely everything. And running a law firm is a huge thing to do. I mean, I remember setting targets to myself as to how much sort of client work I was going to do a day. And I honestly struggled to do more than 2 hours of client work a day, because I
Wow.
would say more than 50% of my job up to this point has been building the law firm, building the brand, creating content, marketing, upskilling myself, because there is that, there isn't there's so many different areas of law, and I was specialist in a couple of them, but I've had to pick up others to be able to create a whole tree law offering. So yeah, it is, and it's been traumatic at times and stressful. It's a vibe. Yeah, I wouldn't do it any other way now, but it is a lot different from how I thought it was going to be, and it is difficult.
Do you think that ignorance is bliss, and otherwise people wouldn't set up their own law firms?
I don't know. Like, I'm not like, if somebody came to me and said, "I'm thinking of setting up a law firm. Can you tell me exactly what it's like?" I I just think it's just too enormous a thing to tell somebody. And also, I don't know exactly what sort of thing they want to create. I think a lot of what I wanted to create was something that I didn't think already existed. So you get so many people saying, "Who are your competitors?" And it's like, I didn't find a competitor out there. I created something that I thought was missing. Um, so perhaps that made it a little bit more difficult, and that there wasn't a well trodden path to follow. But yeah, there's got to be a bit of ignorance is bliss.
Did you have management roles when you were in the larger firms previously?
Yeah, so my last role, I was a partner and a head, what was called the head of product. So I managed the team that dealt with claims involving trees,
Right.
basically. So yeah, it was a big, I've managed, medium-sized teams up to sort of 15, 20 people. So yeah, quite a bit of management experience. And I think actually that was a lot of, I've been thinking about setting up a business for a while, and it was almost like the technology caught up with me and met me in the middle, because I was thinking, how do you bootstrap a business and afford a secretary, an office, filing cabinets, paper, reprographic, how do you afford all the logistics? And then all of a sudden you think, you don't need to afford all of those logistics, because those can largely be automated, cloud-based case management systems, no need for a secretary, digital dictate, all of those sorts of things.
There was just a point in time at which it made sense, and you felt as though you're able to do it. Having had the hankering to do it previously, then suddenly the technology and systems, were affordable, and you could go and do it. You had enough experience of management as
Yeah,
well.
that's what I was going to say. Sorry, managing a team. So I felt that I was going down a bit of a management rabbit hole, and I thought, almost unless I act on this wanting to set up a business now, I'm going to be so far removed from doing the work that I'm not going to be able to do the work. Um, so that is one of the reasons which really pushed me to do it then. So that do you know what I mean? I know lots of people that perhaps have managed teams for 10 years, and you give them a file to run, they won't have a clue, they'd be very rusty on being able to do that. I felt that it was perfect time to be able to set up, the tech had caught up with me, and I felt that I was still so close to having managed my own client work that I still had that skill to be able to build on.
I think it's really important when you're a lawyer to work out which kind of lawyer you are, right? And it's not a cookie cutter thing, right? Some people just love doing the law. Some people love doing that. Some people like doing some law and they're doing some management. Some people like managing. Some people like doing something else, business winning or whatever it might be. And I think it's
Mm,
really important to know, what am I good at? What do I love? And if ideally you can do that ikigai and work out like the two of those things and get that balanced right. And I think you're right for you, to have found that point in time where you didn't want to go deeper into the management roles, as it were, necessarily, or get further away from the files. It's almost like a realization moment, isn't it? Self-actualization. This is who I am as a
mm,
lawyer. This is what I want to do. I think it's really important to have that.
mm.
Do you think that's why a lot of people do that at a certain age? Like it's almost like you've got the grounding and you've got the experience, and that's why, quite a lot of female founders that I speak to probably do what you've done, maybe in late 30s, 40s, mid 40s. You know what I mean? It's around that time they feel as though they've got enough under their belt, and that's when they
Yeah.
want to do it.
Yeah, that was definitely it for me. I think a lot of people talk about creating a business which can be flexible to fit in
Mhm.
with the other pressures in their life. That wasn't what drove me. I really enjoy that structure of going to work, being in an office, and that was something which I struggled with and missed. But yeah, I think it's probably right. I think it's a mix of feeling competent enough got that experience enough. And I think almost you need to have been tipped into being irritated enough by the environment that you're in to think I'm going to create something different. That was it for me.
Has there been a like community of other founders that you've come across, met with, and spent time with over the course of those 4 years of setting up the firm?
Oh, definitely, yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I'm not sure whether that was because I was looking out for them. I think I probably was almost like looking out for them and tapping in and saying, are you experiencing this craziness as well? And then like downloading to one another and checking that you're going through a normal experience. But yeah, do you know what? On Friday, I had an email, a LinkedIn message from someone who's also a law firm founder, and he said, "I've been watching your progress on LinkedIn. Like I know him. He said, I've been watching your progress on LinkedIn. I know how hard a slog it is to set up a law firm, and I just wanted to reach out and say, I feel really proud of what I'm seeing you achieve." And that meant so much because I
Mm.
know that he's done it and he knows exactly what it is to go through. So that was just such a nice thing for him to reach out and say.
Yeah, I love that. I think that we need a little bit more of that in the industry as well, bit of
Mm.
support. But I'm glad that you found that network as well. Let's talk about the kind of technical stuff on the tree side a bit more. I'm keen to make sure everybody understands what it is that you do. What can you give me
Mhm.
some examples of the most kind of common issues that you might deal with as a team?
In terms of the hottest topic that I get asked about, it's tree preservation orders. But
Yeah.
that's probably not what I'm dealing with mostly in terms of casework. So in terms of casework, it's mostly um, where a tree has caused damage to a property. So that could either be because it's fallen down or it's causing subsidence damage, or the good old argument between neighbours for various reasons over trees, whether it's the trees overhanging a boundary or at risk of failure, something like that. So I'd say those are two of my most common.
And is there, do you think it's one of those areas that didn't previously get served enough by lawyers, i.e., people were kind of trying to work it out for themselves or kind of circumventing the law, as it were, a bit? And is it something now that people will take formal legal advice on more than they would have done a few years ago?
I think possibly, and I say possibly because I think people care about trees more now. Um, and I've got to be careful that I haven't just created my own echo chamber and that's just how I perceive it. But I think with the
Hmm.
climate crisis, people are getting in contact wanting to campaign and save trees more. So, for example, I'll act for campaign groups or individuals that want to object to trees being removed, that sort of thing. And I think on cases such as trees involving damage, that possibly has involved solicitors instructed by insurance companies, but individuals who perhaps have a stronger opinion might want to instruct their own independent solicitor for advice.
I think it's likely then with climate change upon us and that we're going to see more tree stories in the headline over the course of the next year, 2 years, 3 years. I mean, it seems to have been a big year for, Sycamore Gap and some other things that you've been working on as well. It's been a big year for trees on the
Yeah,
telly, trees in headlines.
they are grabbing the headlines, aren't they? And that hasn't happened before.
No.
And I remember what, like, so trees causing subsidence damage, for example, that's where a tree's grown too close to a property, and
Hmm.
and the roots from the tree grow underneath the foundations of the property. And if the property is built on a certain sort of soil, the removal of moisture in the summer will cause the property to go down, and then as it rehydrates, it'll go up in the winter. And that down and up, once it goes past a certain um, gravity, it can cause the property to crack.
Yeah.
And those cases happen mostly in hot, dry summers. And historically, that had been hot, dry summers in the southeast of England. With climate change now, we're seeing those cases move far more north in the UK. For example, I'm getting quite a lot of calls from people in Newcastle, from arborists in Newcastle, saying we're seeing subsidence damage. We sort of haven't seen it before. What should we do? What do we look out for? What should we be advising people on? So there's no doubt that climate change is making these cases move around the UK to areas where it hasn't been hot and dry enough previously for them to be. And then on the flip side, we've got storms as well, climate change related, and trees falling down in storms and causing some quite catastrophic damage.
Okay. That's really good. What's the strangest argument you've heard from someone who's trying to cut a tree down or keep a tree?
I mean, there's the usual, aren't there? There's shade, birds are landing on it and pooing on my car, leaves are falling off and making my path slippery. And then one interesting one that's not strange, it's an interesting one that cropped up in the Sheffield street tree debacle, I call it, which happened between 2012 and 2016, which was that trees were planted as memorials to fallen soldiers.
Right.
So that was an objection when the local authority wanted to remove trees that were planted as memorials. People were objecting because it was just like, destroying something that was there as a memorial. So that was
They
an
felt it was
interesting one.
disrespectful from the person that they'd be
Yeah.
memorialised in the first place. Okay.
And I do hear that people saying someone wants to remove my tree and I planted it in memory of my dead husband, that sort of thing, that very emotive.
But that emotional side is what we were just talking about as well. I think beyond climate change, the sycamore gap kind of tree as well was huge. And I think that people have an emotional attachment to that image, to that
Mm.
tree, to having been there.
And I was going to say the sycamore gap is, as a lawyer, I'm not glad it's happened, but it's absolutely catapulted trees and tree preservation into everybody's, into the media, into, the front page media. And that trial is going ahead end of April, a 10-day jury trial, criminal trial. So that's going to get so much attention. There's going to be such interesting points being raised there. Most notably is how to put a value on a tree like that. What is the impact of losing a tree like that? How can you compensate for it, or how can you punish it via a fine?
I think there were loads of questions that when I sat and watched that news, I just thought, like, who are we? Who have we become at societal level? It was really such a big question. I didn't even know that the tree would prompt that thinking me. But I thought when people think it's okay to go and do something like that, and who knows what their reasoning was, right? That was what really
Mm.
prompted for me. And I think that it's almost like a symbol for where we are at the moment and what needs to change and what needs to change going forward for the climate change. Okay. Have you got
Mm.
do you mind me asking, have you got a favorite tree, maybe from a movie or that features in a book or something like that? Have you got anything?
I did read that question on your list, and the thing that first sprung to mind, and I don't know why this sprung to mind, was the old film Kramer versus Kramer. Do you remember that? That was a
I
legal
do.
drama. And I just remember the New York parks, street line parks. And I think there was an iconic scene where the little boy's running up to his mum. And I remember the first time I ever went to New York, walking into Central Park and saying to my friend, "Oh my gosh, it's just like Kramer versus Kramer." So that was the answer that sprung to mind.
I love that. It's so evocative, isn't it, as well? That and it's
Mm,
rooted in where you first watched it and the kind of memories that go with it as well.
yeah.
A slightly facetious question, but if trees could sue people, if trees had the ability to kind of litigate themselves, who do you think they'd go after first?
Do you know what? You're laughing, so thinking that's an unusual question. But I've been to conferences where a barrister has actually written an entire skeleton argument, as if he was instructed by the tree, and an entire mock trial went ahead in a woodland with the tree having, status to be able to bring a claim themselves. So there's lots of people really playing with this as a notion to be able to give a tree that ability to have its own legal standing. So if trees could, who do I think they would go after?
Maybe teenage lovers with penknives who've inscribed their initials in the bark.
I mean, I could say something like, oh, developers or local authorities or infrastructure providers. But I don't know. I think, don't trees come in peace? No, they come in peace and they come with love and they interact with one another via their roots underground. I don't think they would. I think they would come in peace without blame. That's, yeah,
They're
fiction.
more up for mediation, maybe, rather than full blown commercial litigation instead.
Yeah.
You've done some social media work, including like the visuals of trees as well this year. How's that gone? Have you found that people are willing to join in these kind of? I think you've done some photography based kind of campaigns.
Yeah. Around. Yeah. So I've got two main social media channels. I've got LinkedIn, where I'm very much trying to market to, I suppose, like the professional audience. This is what I'm doing. If you've got a claim or a referral or a client that you think might be interested in what I've got to say. And posts that I do there just try and hammer home the ethos of the business, being climate friendly, trying to do things differently, putting trees at the heart of what we do. And then my other channel is my YouTube channel. So I try and do some video content. So short form video content, answering questions that I get asked most commonly, which that started from the fact that I was getting so many phone calls asking me the same questions or emails asking me the same questions. I thought if I just do some videos, then I can refer that person to the video, then they can stop phoning me. But it's definitely gets quite a bit of traction. I get clients phoning in saying, "Oh, I saw you on YouTube. Can I instruct you?" So I definitely should be ploughing more time and energy into doing that.
Difficult one to get right, though, isn't it? It's just that distinction between the questions that draw people towards us, or the fact that you've got to answer it 1,000 times a week. And it's I got that balance. It's knowing how to market that, or have a blog, or have a video as well that covers it. I like your thinking as well. Let's go back to the lawyers and specialization as well. So we've got people who are just graduating at the moment. Maybe they're coming through as NQs. Maybe they're in real estate as well. But tell me a bit about the advice that you'd give to those people who are a bit nervous about specializing based on your experience.
Oh, I don't know. I remember being given advice when I qualified, and I was told that and this was like I qualified in 2002, so this is, 23 years ago. I was told that between NQ and 4 years, you're the most attractive candidate for other law firms because your experience up to that point, what you've done doesn't necessarily matter. They're looking for your skills, your willingness to learn, that sort of thing. And I was told in those 4 years that if you wanted to move around, that's the time to get as much experience under your belt. I remember that because I didn't do it. And I thought, was that actually silly not to have done that? I should have had more experience. And looking back, I think I probably, if I could live that time again, I probably would have moved around, got more experience in my earlier years. But I think it's got to be, you have to follow what you enjoy. You spend so much time in work. Work has become my life now. I know that's cheesy. My life and work is just so linked. But unless you bring a genuine passion to what you're doing, then isn't that just going to drive you nuts? You'll just bore yourself to death. So I think just always follow what interests you. And if that's niching down, then niche down. But if you like to, get involved in lots of different things, get involved in lots of different things. I don't think there's necessarily a right or wrong. There are so many different models and options out there. I think you'll find one that will suit you if you look hard enough.
Yeah, I think that's good advice as well. And maybe if you're based somewhere where the model doesn't suit you, maybe that's the thing to do, is to find somewhere where there is a model that does suit you as well. If you had that time again, then Sarah, what and I'm saying that you're banned from doing your current practice areas, what would you go and do? Which area of law would you practice in instead?
Well, I trained with the NHS in Wales doing clinical negligence and personal injury, and I did enjoy that. So I think I probably would have done a little bit more clinical negligence work. Enjoy that, and I really did. I enjoyed studying family law as well, but I think that would have dragged me under. I would have found that too difficult, I think. But yeah, either one of those two, I think.
Yeah, they're both deeply kind of personal as well as technical. They're deeply personal, I think, and kind of relate to human beings quite a lot as well. Final question then. Tell me what your favorite tree is. I haven't asked you. What type of tree is your favorite tree?
What type of tree? Do you know what? The one that I feel like I'm going into bat for mostly is oak trees.
Right.
Apart from like obviously the sycamore gap trees, the sycamore, but I'm involved in lots of cases involving oak trees, ancient oak trees that are, alleged to have caused damage to property. Damage can be very minor, and yet the oak trees are sort of irreplaceable, sort of 200-year-old plus trees. So yeah, I know it's cheesy because I think oak is the UK's favourite tree, but I think it's got to be the oak tree.
I love it. A very British choice. Sarah, thank you so much for joining me today. I've really enjoyed it. I'm sure everyone who's been listening and watching will have it firmly set in their mind now that if they've got any tree issues, they're going to be heading in your direction immediately. I love that level of kind of it's so easy. We call it in marketing, we call it frictionless. Like when it's there and it's just so easy to instruct you because you know exactly what you do, right? That is the dream, right? You wouldn't believe how much of marketing is about removing that friction actually to buying it.
Mm.
So congratulations on that front from me. But for the rest of you who are watching, if you've enjoyed it, please share this video with a friend or tell people about Sarah or tell people about the podcast, whatever you want to do. But we'll never take your time with us for granted. So thank you, Sarah, for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.